I'm honored this morning to share with you some information about one of our missions partners, Genesis Women's Shelter. Every year, Wilshire makes a financial contribution to this important organization, but of course our engagement as a congregation goes well beyond that. As an example, a small group from my Sunday school class, the Epiphany class, cooks breakfast one Saturday every month at the emergency shelter for the women and children there. In the past 2 years, we've provided a home-cooked Thanksgiving dinner for some 50 to 60 people in the emergency shelter, as well as the transitional housing unit. I'll explain in a minute why these Saturday breakfasts have become something I look forward to every month, but first let me give you just a little bit of background. Genesis serves approximately 1,200 women each year through their counseling services, their emergency shelter, which houses women and children for 6 weeks in a protected environment, and then their transitional housing, where survivors of domestic violence can live for longer periods of time until they're able to live independently. Now that may sound like a large number, but keep in mind that studies show that 30 to 38% of Texas women have experienced domestic violence at some point in their lives. So a third. So that's possibly a third of the women in Dallas. So that might be possibly true for 1 in 3 women who live on your street. Could possibly even be true for 1 in 3 women in this room. So Genesis addresses a significant issue in our community. As some of you know, I'm a pediatrician in a low-income clinic near Fair Park, so I can't help but view most everything through the lens of how children are impacted. We know that 1 in 15 children are exposed to violence in their home, and those children are at least 13 times more likely to abuse drugs or alcohol or to become violent themselves. In my job, I'm asked pretty much daily to address attention deficit issues or behavioral problems. And I've learned that the effects of domestic violence can be complicated and they aren't always physically visible. Because you know, it's really hard to focus on your work when you can't predict if you're going home to a quiet evening or a violent one. And it's hard to know how to handle normal playground squabbles when the only model of conflict resolution you've ever seen involves hitting or screaming. And it's really hard to listen and pay attention to your teacher if you're worried that your mom might get hurt while you're gone and somehow you think it's your job to be home to protect her. So it's especially meaningful for me to show up, even for just a Saturday morning, to cook a nice big breakfast for these women and their children in a peaceful, safe environment. Many times we have more children come down the stairs for breakfast than we do women, and we always take along some kind of little craft or project, some activity for them to do. Those of you who have kids, or those of you who work with kids or know kids, know how important it is to have a predictable routine for them. So you can imagine what it must be like for them to move suddenly, be snatched up and taken to a new place, even if it's a safer place, taking nothing with them, leaving behind familiar toys and books and the bed that they're used to. So hopefully it helps a little bit to come downstairs where somebody's making you pancakes or waffles and you can make a fun craft for your mom. And I think it's especially important that the men from Epiphany show up. It's delightful to see kids color a picture or play with Play-Doh with men who are calm and gentle and kind to them. You can imagine what it would be like to be a little kid and be in an emergency shelter when it's your birthday. Or maybe worse, you can imagine what it's like to be a mom in an emergency shelter and it's your child's birthday. So Genesis has a program where you can put together a box. It's a specific birthday box with plates and napkins and party favors and maybe a cake mix and something age-specific, theme-specific, so that they can give it to the mom and then she can throw a little party for her child. It's pretty easy to pick up a few extras when you're planning a party at your house. Genesis also has something called the Heroes program. It stands for He Respects Others. This is specifically for men to participate in a variety of ways. And they have a court accompaniment program where trained volunteers go with the domestic violence survivor to court proceedings just to support her and to sit in the courtroom as a silent presence that says, "I'm with her." They have a variety of outreach programs that provide preventative education to all age groups. There's lots of ways that we can be involved. At Christmas time, many of you brought presents for the Genesis giving tree. You bought specific presents for names that were on the tree so that they could get a gift for Christmas. And Heather assigned me the task of loading all those things up in my car and delivering them to the Genesis Distribution Center. So I did that, and when I got there, the parking lot was crowded, and the building was kind of busy and chaotic and loud. People were loading and unloading and sorting and wrapping. So I just walked in and said, "Hey, I've brought some things from Wilshire." And the lady said, "Hey, everybody, this is our Wilshire person." And it got quiet, and people stopped what they were doing, and the people that I had already met came over and hugged me, and the people I hadn't met came up and introduced themselves, and then they hugged me. And I kind of felt like a celebrity just for a minute because I said I was the Wilshire person. So what I want to say is thank you, Wilshire, for being the kind of church that engages in a way that led to my receiving that kind of welcome just for being a delivery person. And of course, more importantly, thank you for being willing to engage in such a meaningful way in the work of such an empowering, life-saving organization.